You probably think US presidents die heroic, epic deaths under a hail of bullets, just like in Hollywood movies. You are dead wrong. From dropping dead after eating a bowl of cherries, to drinking raw White House sewage, to being brutally tortured to death by their own doctors, the deaths of US presidents are a pitch-black, absurd, and mind-bendingly hilarious comedy of errors. Today, we are looking at how the most powerful men in the world actually died, and the bizarre final words that left their mouths. And trust me, by the time you hear how the 20th president died, your trust in doctors will be destroyed forever. Let's start with the ultimate legend, George Washington. He brought the British Empire to its knees. He survived freezing winters and hundreds of musket bullets. So, what killed the ultimate survivor? A sore throat. Washington caught a cold after riding his horse in the snow. Today, you take a pill, go to sleep, and wake up fine. But in 1799, medical treatments were a little psychotic. His doctors decided to use bloodletting. They took a blade, sliced his arm open, and drained exactly 80 ounces of blood. That is 40% of the blood in his entire body. They literally bled the founding father of America to death. As he lay suffocating, drained of his own blood, what were his final words? "'Tis well." He accepted death like an absolute boss. But Washington's death is completely normal compared to the glitch in the matrix that happened next. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the second and third presidents. They were best friends, then bitter rivals, then best friends again. Exactly 50 years to the day after the Declaration of Independence was signed, July 4th, 1826. Jefferson was dying of a severe infection. He held on through sheer willpower just to see the holiday. His final words? "No, doctor, nothing more." Hundreds of miles away, just a few hours later, a 90-year-old John Adams was also taking his final breaths. Completely unaware that his best friend had died hours earlier, Adams spoke his final, historically famous, and completely incorrect words. "Thomas Jefferson survives." Sorry, John, but he was already a corpse. And just to prove that the universe has a very dark sense of humor, the fifth president, James Monroe, also died on exactly July 4th. 3 presidents, dead on the exact same holiday. You couldn't write a script this crazy. But if you think dying on a holiday is weird, wait until you hear about the White House plumbing. William Henry Harrison gave a 2-hour inauguration speech in the freezing rain without a coat. For over a century, history books told us he died of pneumonia from the cold. That was a lie. Modern scientists discovered that the White House drinking water well was located directly next to a raw sewage dump. Harrison drank feces-contaminated water and died of a severe intestinal infection. He sat in the Oval Office for exactly 31 days. His final words were some delirious, confusing rant about government principles. Nobody understood what he was talking about. The lack of food safety in the 1800s claimed its next victim with Zachary Taylor. It was a scorching July day in Washington, D.C. Taylor wanted to cool off. So, he ate a massive bowl of raw cherries and chugged several glasses of iced milk. 3 days later, he was dead from a severe gastrointestinal infection. The president was assassinated by a snack. His final words were, "I regret nothing," which is exactly what you should say after consuming a lethal amount of dairy. But not everyone died quietly in bed. John Quincy Adams went out like a gladiator. After his presidency ended, instead of retiring, he went back to work in Congress. While literally screaming "no" at the top of his lungs to vote against a law he hated, a blood vessel burst in his brain. He collapsed face first on the House floor and whispered, "This is the last of Earth. I am content." Epic ending. Then comes Andrew Jackson. This man lived like a Terminator. He fought in gun duels, beat his own assassin half to death with a walking cane, and carried 2 musket balls in his body his entire life. Death was terrified to even approach him. When he finally died of heart failure, he looked at his weeping family, the toughest man in America, and simply said, "Oh, do not cry. Be good children, and we shall all meet in heaven." Millard Fillmore's death, on the other hand, was a bit more ridiculous. He suffered a stroke. A nurse spoon-fed him some soup. He swallowed it, looked up, and said, "The nourishment is palatable," and then he died. 5 stars for the soup, 0 stars for the stroke. And now, the real violence begins. Abraham Lincoln, the genius who held a shattering country together. Shot in the back of the head by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater. He never had the chance to leave us with deep, profound final words. His last spoken sentence was to his wife. When she asked if people would judge them for holding hands in public, Lincoln smiled and said, "She won't think anything about it." A few seconds later, the trigger was pulled. But Lincoln's death was fast. James A. Garfield's death was pure, agonizing torture. And the most terrifying part? The assassin's bullet didn't kill him. Garfield was shot in the back at a train station. The bullet missed all his vital organs. He absolutely would have survived. But his arrogant, idiot doctors arrived. They shoved their unwashed, filthy, blood-stained bare fingers directly into the president's open wound to dig for the bullet. They punctured his liver. They pumped his body full of massive, unstoppable infections. For 80 long, agonizing days, the President of the United States rotted alive from the inside out in his own bed. His final words were a desperate plea to his friend. "Swaim, can't you stop the pain?" The president wasn't murdered by an assassin. He was murdered by medical illiteracy. Ulysses S. Grant died fighting a completely different war. He was broke, scammed out of all his money, and dying of throat cancer because he smoked 20 cigars a day. Knowing his family would starve after his death, Grant spent his final, agonizing months furiously writing his memoirs to pay off their debts. He couldn't even speak. His throat was completely destroyed. He handed a piece of paper to his doctor with his final word written on it: water. His book sold millions of copies. He won his final battle, too. The 20th century brought better medicine, but the stress of the Oval Office? That was the ultimate silent killer. Woodrow Wilson was paralyzed by a massive stroke and whispered, "I am a broken piece of machinery." Warren G. Harding was having a heart attack while his wife was reading the newspaper to him in bed. His final words? "That's good. Go on. Read some more." And he instantly dropped dead. Franklin D. Roosevelt led America through the Great Depression and World War II, all while secretly paralyzed by polio. During his 4th term, while posing for a painting, he suddenly whispered, "I have a terrific pain in the back of my head." It was a massive brain hemorrhage. He never woke up. But Theodore Roosevelt? He was an absolute beast. He was shot in the chest by an assassin. The bullet pierced his rib. What did Roosevelt do? Covered in his own blood, refusing to take the bullet out, he stood up and gave an 84-minute speech to the crowd. He only died years later, peacefully in his sleep. His final words? "Put out the light, James." And finally, the darkest day in modern history. John F. Kennedy, Dallas, Texas. The First Lady of Texas turned to Kennedy in the open-top car and said, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." Kennedy smiled and replied, "No, you certainly can't." Half a second later, a sniper's bullet shattered his skull. The youngest elected president became the youngest president to die. Stress eventually catches everyone. Lyndon B. Johnson had a massive heart attack, and with his last breath, he called the Secret Service, gasping, "Send Mike immediately." Richard Nixon suffered a stroke, screamed, "Help!" and fell into a coma. But modern medicine finally stepped up. Today, presidents live longer than almost anyone else on the planet. Ronald Reagan battled Alzheimer's until he was 93. George H.W. Bush passed away at 94, spending his final breath on a phone call to his son to say, "I love you too." And Jimmy Carter managed to hit 100 years old on this earth. 8 U.S. presidents died in office. 4 from natural causes. 4 from a bullet. Some went out screaming in agony. Some went out giving a food review about soup. But it proves one undeniable fact. No matter how much power you hold, no matter if you command armies or control the nuclear codes, in the end, you are just flesh and bone. The clock is ticking the same for all of us. Use your time wisely. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.